I was checking into a hotel when the receptionist quietly pressed a button under the desk. I arrived at the Riverside Inn just after sunset, exhausted from 8 hours of driving through Pennsylvania back roads. The hotel looked decent from the outside, a 3-story brick building with a neon sign advertising free Wi-Fi and continental breakfast. My boyfriend Liam had booked the room online 2 weeks ago, finding a deal too good to pass up for our weekend getaway. $90 a night in peak tourist season seemed like a miracle, and I'd been looking forward to this trip for months. We'd been dating for 6 months, and this was our first vacation together, a test run for the relationship's future. Liam had driven ahead in his own car because he was coming straight from a work conference in Pittsburgh. The plan was to meet at the hotel, check in together, then find somewhere nice for dinner. But his text came through 20 minutes before I arrived saying his meeting was running late and I should check in without him. He'd given me his credit card information over the phone, told me to get the key, and he'd be there within the hour. I'd hesitated because using someone else's card felt weird, but Liam had insisted it was fine, that couples did this all the time. The lobby was small and outdated, with floral wallpaper that might have been stylish in 1987, and a coffee station that looked like it hadn't been cleaned in days. A young woman stood behind the front desk, maybe mid-20s with brown hair pulled into a tight ponytail. Her name tag read Stephanie, and she smiled when I walked in, the kind of customer service smile that doesn't quite reach the eyes. I approached the counter and explained that I was checking in for a reservation under Liam Brennan's name. Stephanie's smile stayed fixed as she typed into her computer. She asked for identification, and I handed over my driver's license, explaining that my boyfriend had made the reservation and would be arriving soon. Stephanie studied my ID for longer than seemed necessary, her eyes flicking between my face and the license multiple times. She asked if I had the credit card used for the booking. I explained that Liam had the card and provided the number from my phone where he'd texted it. Stephanie typed slowly, her expression unchanging, then asked how I knew Liam. The question caught me off guard because it seemed irrelevant to checking into a hotel room. I laughed nervously and said he was my boyfriend, that we were here for a romantic weekend. Stephanie nodded but didn't smile. She asked how long we'd been together. 6 months, I answered, confused about why this mattered for hotel check-in. She asked where we met. At a coffee shop near my apartment, I said, my patience starting to thin. She asked if my family knew I was here. The question sent a chill down my spine because it was so strange, so out of place. Yes, I told my sister I was taking a trip. Why are you asking me this? Stephanie's hand moved beneath the desk, a subtle motion I almost didn't notice. She pressed something, and I heard a faint electronic beep. Her expression remained neutral as she said she needed to verify some information with the manager before completing my check-in. She asked me to wait in the lobby and disappeared through a door marked Staff Only. I stood there confused and increasingly irritated, checking my phone to see if Liam had texted an update. Nothing. The lobby felt suddenly oppressive, too quiet except for the hum of the vending machines. A man emerged from the staff door 5 minutes later, older and heavier than Stephanie, wearing a polo shirt with the hotel logo. He introduced himself as Dennis, the night manager, and asked if I could step into the back office for a moment. There was a problem with the reservation that needed to be sorted out. I followed him through the staff door into a small office cluttered with filing cabinets and a desk covered in paperwork. Stephanie was there too, standing in the corner with her arms crossed. Dennis sat behind the desk and gestured for me to sit in the chair opposite. He asked how old I was. 23, I answered, my confusion turning to alarm. He asked for my ID again and studied it carefully, comparing the photo to my face multiple times. He asked where I lived, where I worked, where my family was located. I provided answers mechanically, not understanding what was happening but feeling increasingly trapped in this tiny office. Dennis asked how I met Liam. I repeated the coffee shop story, my voice getting defensive. He asked if Liam had ever given me gifts, paid for things, taken me places. Of course, I said, that's what boyfriends do. Dennis exchanged a look with Stephanie that I couldn't interpret. He asked if I had Liam's phone number, and I showed him the text thread on my phone. Dennis wrote down the number, then asked if I'd ever met Liam's family or friends. I admitted I hadn't yet, that we'd kept things pretty private because we were both busy with work. Dennis asked where Liam worked. I realized with embarrassment that I didn't know the company name, just that he worked in pharmaceutical sales. Dennis asked for Liam's home address. I gave him the apartment building where Liam lived, but not the specific unit number because I'd only been there twice. That's when Dennis said something that made my blood run cold. Ma'am, we have reason to believe you might be in danger. My immediate reaction was to laugh because the suggestion was absurd. Danger from what? Dennis said they'd seen situations like mine before. Young women traveling with older men who'd met them recently, using the man's credit card, unable to provide basic information about their companion. They'd been trained to recognize signs of human trafficking. The word hit me like a physical blow. Trafficking? I'm not being trafficked. I'm on vacation with my boyfriend. Stephanie spoke for the first time since we'd entered the office. She said they'd called the police, that officers were on their way to make sure I was safe. My stomach dropped. You called the police? Why would you do that? Dennis said it was hotel policy when they suspected trafficking, that they were legally obligated to report suspicious situations. I stood up, my hands shaking. This is insane. Liam is my boyfriend. We're not doing anything illegal. I need to call him. I reached for my phone, but Dennis asked me to wait, to let them handle this properly. The next 20 minutes felt like hours. Dennis and Stephanie kept me in that office, asking questions that felt increasingly invasive. Had Liam ever hurt me? No. Had he ever threatened me? No. Had he ever asked me to do anything I was uncomfortable with? No. Did I have money of my own? Yes. Could I leave if I wanted to? Obviously, yes. But every answer I gave seemed to confirm their suspicions rather than dispel them. They'd constructed a narrative where I was a victim too traumatized or brainwashed to recognize my own exploitation. 2 police officers arrived, a man and a woman, both in uniform. The female officer, whose badge read Officer Reyes, asked to speak with me alone. Dennis and Stephanie left the office, and Officer Reyes sat where Dennis had been. She had kind eyes but a firm voice. She said she needed to ask me some difficult questions and I should answer honestly. I told her I'd been answering honestly this entire time. She asked about Liam, and I repeated everything I'd already said. She asked if he'd ever taken photographs of me. Yes. Normal couple photos. She asked if he'd ever posted them online. I didn't know. I wasn't on his social media. Officer Reyes asked if I had access to my own money and transportation. Yes, my car was in the parking lot with my purse and wallet inside. She asked if Liam had ever restricted my movements or controlled who I talked to. No, nothing like that. She asked if I was being paid to be here. The question was so offensive, I actually gasped. No, I'm not a prostitute if that's what you're implying. Officer Reyes held up her hands. I'm not implying anything. I'm trying to make sure you're safe. But you don't understand the situations we see. Young women who think they're in relationships but are actually being exploited. I asked if I was being detained or if I was free to leave. Officer Reyes said I was free to go but strongly advised against meeting Liam until they'd verified his identity and intentions. She said if I was wrong about him, if he was something other than what I believed, leaving with him could put me in serious danger. She offered to arrange alternate accommodations to help me get home safely, to connect me with resources for trafficking victims. Every offer reinforced the nightmare narrative they'd created where I was a victim who didn't know she was a victim. My phone rang. Liam's name lit up the screen. Officer Reyes asked if she could answer it. I said no, handed the phone to her anyway because I was too overwhelmed to think clearly. She answered and put it on speaker. Liam's voice came through confused and worried. Hey babe, I just got to the hotel but you're not in the room. Are you okay? Officer Reyes identified herself as police and asked Liam to come to the front desk. The silence on the line lasted several seconds before Liam asked why police were involved. Officer Reyes said there were questions about the reservation, and they needed to verify some information. Liam arrived at the hotel 5 minutes later. I could see him through the office's small window, tall and handsome in his business casual clothes, looking around the lobby with visible confusion. The male officer approached him, and they spoke for a moment before both came toward the office. Officer Reyes opened the door and asked Liam to step inside. He saw me, and his face flooded with relief and concern. Are you okay? What's going on? Officer Reyes asked him to sit down and provide identification. Liam handed over his driver's license, his eyes never leaving my face. The officers asked Liam the same questions they'd asked me. How did you meet? How long have you been dating? Where do you work? What's your relationship like? Liam answered patiently, but with growing frustration. He worked for Morrison Pharmaceuticals, lived in apartment 3C at his building, had been dating me for 6 months, and yes, he'd used his credit card because he'd made the reservation. Officer Reyes asked why he'd had me check in alone. Because my meeting ran late and I didn't want her waiting in the car for an hour. Is that a crime? Officer Reyes asked to see Liam's phone. He unlocked it and handed it over without hesitation. She scrolled through his messages, photos, call history. She asked about the age difference. Liam was 31 to my 23, 8 years older. She asked if he'd dated younger women before. Liam's jaw tightened. I've dated women of various ages. I don't see how that's relevant. Officer Reyes said they were checking for patterns of predatory behavior. Liam's expression shifted from frustrated to angry. Predatory behavior? We're 2 adults in a consensual relationship. This is outrageous. The officers stepped out to confer, leaving Liam and me alone in the office. He moved toward me and took my hands. I'm so sorry. I had no idea this would happen. Are you okay? I nodded but felt tears building. They think you're trafficking me. They think I'm some kind of victim who doesn't know she's being exploited. Liam pulled me into a hug. This is insane. We'll straighten it out and file a complaint. This is harassment. But I felt a growing unease beneath the anger because the officers' questions had planted seeds of doubt I didn't want to acknowledge. Officer Reyes returned and said they'd verified Liam's identity and employment. Everything checked out. They couldn't hold us or prevent us from checking into the hotel. However, she handed me a card with trafficking hotline numbers and resources for domestic violence victims. She said if I ever felt unsafe or needed help, I should call immediately. The implication was clear. They still believed something was wrong but couldn't prove it. Liam snatched the card from my hand and tore it in half. We don't need this. We're leaving. Dennis appeared to complete our check-in. His demeanor now apologetic but still suspicious. He processed the reservation silently and handed over 2 key cards. He said the room was on the third floor and breakfast was from 6 to 10. He didn't apologize for the ordeal. Stephanie watched from behind the counter, her expression unreadable. Liam grabbed our keycards and my hand, pulling me toward the elevator. I felt the weight of everyone's eyes following us, all these people certain they'd just made a terrible mistake by letting a trafficking victim walk away with her abuser. The hotel room was generic and clean, 2 double beds with floral comforters and a TV mounted to the wall. Liam dropped his bag and immediately started pacing. Can you believe that? They racially profiled us based on age difference and some outdated stereotypes about trafficking. I'm calling a lawyer. This is discrimination. But I sat on the edge of the bed feeling strange and disconnected. Liam noticed and sat beside me. Hey, I know that was scary and weird, but it's over now. We're here. Let's order room service and try to salvage the evening. I asked the question that had been forming since Officer Reyes's interrogation. Why haven't I met your friends or family yet? Liam looked surprised by the question. We've talked about this. My family lives in Oregon, and I haven't been back since we started dating. My friends are mostly work people, and our schedules haven't lined up. Why are you asking this now? I said the officers had made me realize how little I actually knew about his life outside our relationship. Liam's expression hardened. So now you're doubting me because some overzealous hotel staff called the cops? I said I wasn't doubting him exactly, but maybe we'd moved too fast, kept things too isolated. Liam stood up and walked to the window. You're letting them get in your head. This is exactly what they do. They make you question everything so you'll turn against the person they've decided is a threat. I'm not a trafficker. I'm not abusing you. I love you. The declaration hung in the air because he'd never said it before. I love you, he repeated, turning to face me. I wouldn't hurt you. You know that, right? I wanted to believe him completely. Part of me did believe him, but another part, the part that had answered all those questions and realized how many I couldn't answer, felt uncertain. I asked to see his phone again, to look through his photos and messages. Liam's face cycled through emotions. Hurt, anger, resignation. You don't trust me. After 6 months together, you're choosing to believe strangers over your own boyfriend. I said I just needed reassurance, needed to quiet the doubts they'd planted. Liam unlocked his phone and tossed it on the bed. Go ahead. Invade my privacy. Violate my trust. I picked up the phone feeling guilty but compelled. His photo gallery showed normal pictures. Selfies, food, work events, a few photos of us together looking happy. His messages were mundane. Conversations with coworkers about meetings, texts to his mom about visiting for Christmas, group chats about sports. Nothing suspicious or alarming. I handed back the phone. I'm sorry. I don't know why I doubted you. Liam took the phone but didn't soften. Because they made you doubt me. That's what they wanted. Now our entire weekend is tainted by their paranoia. We ordered room service but barely touched the food. The evening felt ruined, every conversation stilted and uncomfortable. Liam kept bringing up the incident, talking about filing complaints and lawsuits. I just wanted to forget it happened but couldn't shake the lingering unease. We went to bed early, in separate beds because the mood for romance had been thoroughly destroyed. I lay awake for hours listening to Liam's breathing, trying to convince myself everything was fine. The hotel had made a mistake. They'd been overzealous. We were just a normal couple on vacation. I woke early to voices outside our room, raised voices, urgent and commanding, then pounding on the door. Police, open up. Liam shot out of bed, confused and alarmed. What the hell? He opened the door and 4 officers pushed inside, hands on their weapons. Liam Brennan? The lead officer asked. Liam nodded, backing away. You're under arrest for solicitation of a minor and possession of child sexual abuse material. The words made no sense. Liam started shouting denials as they turned him around and cuffed his hands behind his back. Officer Reyes was there, her expression grim. She asked me to get dressed and come to the station to make a statement. I stood frozen in my pajamas watching them read Liam his rights. This is a mistake, Liam was saying. I don't know what you think you found, but this is wrong. Officer Reyes guided me into the bathroom and told me to take my time. Her gentleness felt ominous. I dressed in a daze, my hands shaking so badly I could barely button my jeans. When I emerged, Liam was being led out in handcuffs, still shouting about mistakes and lawyers. At the police station, Officer Reyes brought me coffee and sat across a table in an interview room. She explained that after verifying Liam's identity last night, they'd run a more thorough background check. They'd found an ongoing FBI investigation into a child exploitation network. Liam's name had appeared in connection with online forums where users traded illegal material. A warrant for his phone and computer had revealed extensive evidence of possession and distribution. The FBI had been building a case for months, and our hotel check-in had accidentally intersected with their investigation. Officer Reyes said they'd monitored Liam's phone overnight after returning it to him. They'd seen messages sent after we went to bed, messages to other network members warning that police were asking questions. He'd been planning to disappear, to leave the hotel early and go underground. The arrest this morning had been urgent to prevent him fleeing. She asked if he'd ever shown me anything concerning. Any photos or websites or conversations that seemed inappropriate? I shook my head, numb with shock and disbelief. Nothing. He'd never shown me anything like that. She asked if he'd ever photographed me in situations that felt uncomfortable, or asked me to pose in ways that seemed strange. No, just normal couple photos. She asked if he'd ever tried to introduce me to other men or suggested scenarios involving other people. No, never. She asked if he'd tried to isolate me from family and friends. I started to say no, then hesitated. He hadn't explicitly isolated me, but we had kept our relationship very private. I'd told my family about him, but hadn't brought him to family dinners. I'd mentioned him to friends, but hadn't introduced them. Was that normal privacy or strategic isolation? Officer Reyes showed me printouts of conversations from Liam's phone, recovered from encrypted messaging apps. The content made me physically ill. Discussions about meeting underage girls, sharing photographs of children, planning trips to locations known for child exploitation. The timestamps showed messages sent during our relationship, sometimes while we were together. I thought about the nights he'd been texting while I watched TV, the bathroom breaks during dinner, the morning messages before I woke up. He'd been living this parallel life the entire time. She showed me photos recovered from his computer. I couldn't look at most of them, turning away when I glimpsed enough to understand what they contained. But she made me look at one photo in particular. A young girl, maybe 13 or 14, in a hotel room. The floral comforter was identical to the ones in our room upstairs. Officer Reyes said the Riverside Inn had appeared in multiple photos on Liam's computer. He'd been here before, possibly multiple times, meeting underage girls he'd groomed online. Last night wasn't his first visit. I was. The realization hit like a physical blow. He'd brought me to a hotel where he'd previously committed crimes, using the same playbook he'd used with other victims. Book online, have the girl check in alone, arrive separately to avoid suspicion. Stephanie, the receptionist, hadn't been paranoid or overzealous. She'd been trained to recognize the exact pattern Liam was executing. The age difference, the separate arrival, my inability to provide basic information about him, using his credit card, all of it fit a profile she'd been taught to identify. She'd saved me by pressing that button. Officer Reyes explained that hotel staff across the country received training to recognize trafficking and exploitation patterns. The Riverside Inn had been flagged by the FBI months ago as a location Liam had used before. They'd provided additional training to staff and asked them to report any suspicious check-ins. When Stephanie had recognized the pattern last night, her button press had alerted both hotel management and a dedicated police unit monitoring the location. Everything that followed, the interrogation, the verification, even letting us check in, had been part of a coordinated effort to confirm Liam's identity and obtain evidence for arrest. I'd thought they were harassing us. I'd thought they were paranoid and overreaching. I'd chosen to believe my boyfriend over trained professionals who'd been trying to protect me. Officer Reyes saw my expression and said this wasn't my fault. Predators like Liam were expert manipulators who created relationships that felt genuine while serving their actual purposes. I'd been a form of cover, an age-appropriate girlfriend who made him look normal while he pursued his real interests. My presence in his life had been calculated camouflage. She asked if I needed medical attention or counseling resources. I shook my head, unable to speak. She asked if there was anyone I wanted to call. I thought about calling my sister but couldn't imagine explaining this over the phone. Officer Reyes said I was free to leave whenever I was ready, that they'd be in touch if they needed additional statements. She walked me to the station lobby where morning sunlight streamed through windows. The normal world continued outside, people going to work and running errands, completely unaware that monsters lived among them disguised as pharmaceutical salesmen and charming boyfriends. I drove home in a fugue state, barely remembering the route or the hours it took. My apartment felt like a crime scene because Liam had been there, had sat on my couch and eaten at my table and slept in my bed. Everything felt contaminated. I called my sister and tried to explain what had happened, my words tumbling out incoherently. She drove 2 hours to reach me and held me while I cried, trying to process the impossible truth that I'd been dating a child predator without knowing it. Every memory of our relationship was now poisoned, every sweet moment revealed as manipulation. The news coverage started within days. Liam's arrest was part of a larger takedown of the exploitation network. His face appeared on television, described as a key participant who'd been under investigation for over a year. They showed his mugshot, the same face I'd kissed and trusted and loved. Reporters called my phone trying to get statements from the girlfriend who didn't know. I blocked every number and deleted my social media accounts. Online commenters debated whether I'd truly been ignorant or complicit. How could you not know? They asked. What kind of person dates a monster and doesn't see it? I asked myself the same questions daily. What signs had I missed? What red flags had I dismissed? His privacy about his phone could have been normal or suspicious. His reluctance to introduce me to his life could have been caution or strategy. His finding of that too-good-to-be-true hotel deal now seemed obviously purposeful. He'd needed cover for another visit to a location he'd used before, and I'd been the perfect unwitting accomplice. My presence had made his check-in look like a couple's vacation instead of a predator's hunting trip. Stephanie gave an interview to a local news station about recognizing warning signs and trusting intuition. She described the training she'd received and how it had paid off in identifying Liam's pattern. She'd known within 2 minutes of talking to me that something was wrong. The way I'd struggled to answer basic questions about my boyfriend, the separate arrival, the age difference, the use of his credit card. All of it had triggered her training. Pressing that button had been instinctive. She'd potentially save not just me but other future victims by helping capture Liam before he could harm anyone else. The trial happened 8 months later. I wasn't required to testify because I hadn't witnessed his crimes, but I attended anyway. I needed to see him face consequences. Needed to hear the evidence laid out completely so the truth could override my memories of who I'd thought he was. The prosecution presented overwhelming evidence. Thousands of illegal images and videos on his devices, chat logs detailing exploitation and abuse, testimony from FBI agents about the network's operations, victims who'd been brave enough to come forward and describe what he'd done to them. Liam showed no remorse. His defense argued entrapment and illegal search procedures, technical challenges that ignored the human devastation documented in the evidence. The jury deliberated for 3 hours before returning guilty verdicts on all counts. The judge sentenced him to 30 years in federal prison, calling him a danger to society who'd used his charm and resources to prey on vulnerable children. I watched him being led away in shackles, this person I'd thought I'd known, and felt nothing but hollow relief that he'd never hurt anyone again. Afterward, I met with Stephanie at a coffee shop near the Riverside Inn. She'd been getting recognition for her quick thinking that night, had helped train other hotel staff in the region on identifying trafficking patterns. We talked about intuition and training and the terrible responsibility of seeing danger that victims themselves couldn't recognize. She said the hardest part was when victims defended their abusers, when they insisted everything was fine because they'd been so thoroughly manipulated. She'd doubted herself that night when I'd been so convincing in my defense of Liam, had wondered if she'd made a terrible mistake. But she'd trusted her training over my testimony because she'd understood something I couldn't see. Victims rarely recognize their own exploitation while it's happening. The abuse is normalized. The manipulation so complete that questions feel like betrayals of love rather than reasonable caution. She'd saved me not just from immediate danger but from being complicit in Liam's crimes, from unknowingly providing cover for a predator. That button press had changed my life's trajectory in ways I was still processing. I never went back to the Riverside Inn, but I sent Stephanie a thank you card every year on the anniversary of that night. A simple acknowledgement that her vigilance had mattered, that training had worked, that pressing that button had saved me from a future I couldn't imagine but could glimpse in the trial testimony. I'd thought I was just checking into a hotel for a romantic weekend. Instead, I'd walked into a carefully monitored trap that had caught the monster I'd been dating. The button beneath the desk had been a silent alarm that had saved my life. I'd never look at hotel receptionists the same way again, never dismiss their questions as paranoia, never assume my judgment was better than their trained intuition. Sometimes the people who seem like they're ruining your plans are actually saving your life. 5 years later, I work for an organization that trains hotel and hospitality staff to recognize trafficking and exploitation, teaching them to trust their instincts and press that button without hesitation, because sometimes one moment of intervention prevents a lifetime of harm. If you enjoyed this, you'll definitely want to see the next ones too. So subscribe now and let me know your take in the comments.